Hello all, and welcome to the Ethel R. Wolf Institute for the Humanities 2020 Hess Scholar-in-Residence series featuring Winona LaDuke. We are so lucky to have her here. Today's panel is the citizen artist performing resistance. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Brooklyn College sits on the unceded territory stolen from the Canarsie and the Nyack, who are subgroups of the indigenous Lenape people. That ongoing theft, along with the stolen blood and work of enslaved Africans, facilitates our presence here today. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future who have stewarded this land. We recognize the hundreds of indigenous nations who continue to resist and uphold their sacred culture. We know that this acknowledgement is neither sufficient nor complete, but it is a part of the process of learning to become more thoughtful and respectful. And it's our sincere wish for a deeper incorporation of indigenous and Native American cultures, philosophies, and peoples into the curriculum, faculty, student body, and the staff of Brooklyn College, in line with our mission to provide a transformative and distinctive education to the people of New York City. And I want to thank Professor King for that acknowledgement. I have borrowed it from her, and I want to honor her in using her words. My name is Laura Tesman. I am a professor in the Department of Theater. I'm a director and a devised theater maker, and I am honored to be here to share space with today's panelists. Of course, I want to welcome rural development economist and activist Winona LaDuke, and Brooklyn College alumni, performers and theater makers, Catherine George and AJ Augustus Cook. AJ, is he here now? Is he been able to log in? Anybody be able to tell him yet? Don't see him yet. This panel was originally, or this event was originally supposed to be last spring, and the idea was that Winona would come to a class that my colleague and I, Julie Tong, were teaching called Devising and Collaborative Creation, where we devise original short plays around social issues that are important to the students. The idea was that Winona would watch our rough drafts, and we would share and talk about art and the ways in which it is important for artists to be engaged as citizens as well as art makers. Because we are now, because that was canceled, we don't offer that class in the fall semester. So we reimagined this event, and are so excited that Winona is excited to share her experiences and to talk about art created as a part of Native American resistance movements and regulatory processes as street theater, which sounds really exciting. And then Catherine and AJ are going to speak about a project that they developed as a part of the Devising and Collaborative Creation course called Fallow Grounds. They created it in 2016. And both of them have been active artists, civically engaged artists since then, and they're going to share a couple of the projects briefly that they are working on now. I will start us out first of all, we'll open up to questions at the end, so please put your questions in the chat. Professor King has been very generous to offer her services to keep track of the questions coming in, and she will collect those and ask them once we enter that section of the day. The notion of citizen artist can take many forms, which we will see today, I think, and hear about today. Citizen artists are actively engaged with the world around them. They are artists, both students and professionals, who are not daunted or silenced by this increasingly polarized and contentious world, but who are energized by it because they have tools. They have the tools of collaboration, of research, articulation, design and world creation, embodiment, composition, to analyze and reflect on the issues that are most important to them. And those can take many forms in the streets, in the theaters, in unconventional spaces, immersive spaces. Yo-Yo Ma says that citizen artists operate at the edge of artistic innovation and human need. In other words, they bridge the gap between what we know as high art and community art. Citizen artists initiatives place both aspects at the forefront. They are artistically excellent and impact-driven. They employ artistic innovation and create social or civic impact. And so I think that is why we have used this format in the classes that we teach. I'm going to share quickly oops, I have too many windows open. I'm going to share my screen quickly about the class that we teach. Jolie Tong is a professor who has since gotten a job at another institution, so she's not with us today. But this class is formed, it's a self-contained and intensive class. It is completely student-generated work. It engages social issues through research and practice, and the semester culminates in the creation of a 10-minute play. We start with an incubation period where we read, it's like it's sort of a crash course. We read a lot of plays, we read theory, we introduce students to different companies making devised work and visual ways of using space. We do daily embodied practices, viewpoints, yoga, Laban techniques, Grotowski. We do all sorts of different work in that way. And then we move into a generation phase where we're collecting articles and images. We're doing in-class writing exercises. We're doing moment work, which is creating a little short moments that can be visual or that can be in a variety of different, using light or using movement to try to tell your story. And then we head into the third phase, which is our making, building, and doing phase. And this part we feel is sort of so important for building student artists. We break the bigger group. This last semester we had 20 students. We broke them into 5 groups of 4, and they spent the majority of the rest of the semester doing research, choosing a topic that they're interested as a group in investigating, doing research, writing, responding to another, improvising, putting the pieces together, rehearsing that, revising it, and trying it again. And as we said, we end in a devising short play festival, usually in April, where each of the projects are shown over a 3-day period in sequence. And is AJ here, Catherine? Can you see yet?
I will check.
I don't. AJ, are you here?
Yes.
Ah, he's here! Yay! Okay. So can you guys talk about then? I'm going to unshare my screen. Stop share, and I'll let you two. This is AJ Cook and Catherine George, two, again, alumni artists and theater makers who created Fallow Ground in 2016 as a part of this class and are now doing great things. Catherine George is an MFA acting candidate at Columbia University. And AJ has developed his own company, creating work for a variety of different companies that are sort of really understanding how those companies respond to need responsive storytelling ideas. I'll let you guys go.
All right. Hi, yes, as Laura said, we created Fallow Grounds as part of the devising class. I guess it's helpful to start with a brief synopsis of what Fallow Grounds is about. It's essentially about a family who are the last organic farmers or natural farmers in their town and city. And it kind of takes place in this post-apocalyptic world where we've kind of heightened the idea of chemically altered food and seeds to the point where it's almost addictive, and it has pushed out all natural food. Catherine, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Laura was saying in terms of just the process of developing this piece in the devising class. It was so much fun. It's a lot of work, but I think at the end of the whole experience, when we got through the festival, I was like, wow, you know, we have the power to tell stories that matter to us. And I think that this devising class has carried me through everything else that I've done in my entire life as an artist, even until now, working in theater and working in film, and thinking about ways in which we can creatively share information with an audience, you know, because prior to this experience, I didn't know much about genetically modified food at all. And so it was interesting to kind of come together in a community to say, okay, what matters to us? How can we find more information? And how can we do something that is creative, that's engaging, that's informative, and moving ultimately to an audience? So I love this class. One of my favorite classes I've ever taken at Brooklyn College. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak about the research?
Yeah, I was going to say, for what Catherine said about how we created this piece, I remember being very probably one of the most influential aspects of that process for me was how much can come from just sheer research on its own, and not even research and just general interest. I remember on I believe our second week of class, Laura and Jolie pulled out a big piece of cardstock paper and said, everybody write 3 things that you're just interested in covering. And we didn't have to give too many explanations. We didn't have to go too in depth. We just wrote it all on a piece of paper. And I think all of those things that we wrote in our group specifically somehow made it into our piece without us trying. We sat down to write, as Catherine was saying, about food because that was one of the main interests that we had, and that was probably the most intangible thing that we could latch onto. And when we were doing our research, we were pulling everything from research about Monsanto's food, and I was looking into the idea of a post-apocalyptic world where people are kind of sectioned off in different parts of society. And I think that the way our research process worked is we would kind of come in with our research, and then we would say, okay, well, this is everything that we found. This is what's interesting. Let's go off and write a scene about this, and then come back. And then we'd come back and present that to each other and say, well, we like that. We don't like that. That kind of works. Well, that inspires this. Yeah, that was probably the most influential part about the research process for me. But I remember it was really important to us that we build this parable with our story. We didn't even have the full breadth that it was going to take place on a farm or a post-apocalyptic world. We just knew that whatever we created, we wanted to reflect what we were finding in our research. We wanted it to reflect the disparity between how people have access to healthy kinds of food and who doesn't have access to it. We wanted to reflect how Monsanto's kind of pressures people and takes over people's land without them really having any kind of natural defense. And we didn't, like I said, we didn't really know till we got to the moment work actually, that it was going to take place in a kitchen or in a farm. That wasn't until Laura and Jolie asked us, okay, well, everybody needs to bring in a moment from their piece, and we all had to just come up with something that they kind of got its legs. But up until that, we just knew we wanted to build this parable that kind of reflected those social situations and
And also to add to that, I think it was also super important to figure out a way to make it theatrical, right? Yes. And so what is the difference between theater and film and television? Well, in a theater is something that you experience live with other bodies in a space, right? And so thinking about a way to tell a compelling story using theatrical elements such as lighting, such as staging, such as sound design, figuring out ways in which we can say, okay, if you were to see this on screen, it would probably flop. But if you see this in person, wow, you're gonna be blown
Our
away.
fire, at one point we had a fire in our in our story, for those of you that read, and I remember the tech in the building of that. It was very much a fun process because we all had to be each other's kind of, stage hands and each other's kind of tech people, and everybody else was like, we're just turning the lights on and cueing the lights off. And we want oranges, we want red, we need a flicker.
Yeah.
Where's the sound? I think like teching that took what, like 2 hours?
And figuring out too with like the limited amount of resources, this isn't a Broadway house, but saying like, okay, we do have these lights and how can we make it look cool? Like how can we amplify the moment with the limited resources that we have? And I think that basis that I learned through this class has again also carried me into my artistry even today, because hello, we are existing during a full pandemic, but I see so many of my artist friends, and I've been blessed to be able to continue to create art and to say, okay, I have this limitation now, but what can I do with what I do have? What can I do with the resources that I have available to me right now?
Yeah.
So I think that we played so much in room, what was it, 316?
16.
Once we found
that
it,
room.
we played a lot in there. And I think
it was a little hard to find, yes, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead, AJ.
Play is so important. AJ, what were you going to say about play?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think play is kind of what would always kind of revitalize our process, because it was our first time devising, or my first time devising, I think a few other people in the group, and sometimes it's like, okay, week after week we've got to come in, sit down at this table, talk some more, figure this out, or especially when you reach a roadblock and it's like week 2 and it's like we're talking about other things, but we know there's this other roadblock in the story that we still have not resolved. It kind of becomes draining. So play was kind of the thing that or the idea of play and experimentation was kind of the thing that really revitalized us and helped us figure out, okay, new different types of ways to attack and come at the idea or the story, or look at, I guess, the problem in the story, or the problem, whatever the problem was, and say, okay, well, maybe it's not really a problem, or maybe we don't even need that anymore because we discovered X, Y, and Z. And I think that's something that I've definitely taken into my collaborative process, whether it's artistic, whether it's business, whatever, this idea that, okay, we have this problem, or we've hit a wall, what can we do? How can we shift our focus and work together and look at the big picture, and also have fun and figure out a way around the wall without constantly concentrating on the problem, sitting down, talking about the problem over and over and over again? How can we experiment? What's the wildest idea we can come up with, and build from there? And I think that's, I've taken that a lot. But back to the research, I just want to say one thing that I remembered last night that I think really sparked our story, or sparked our climax, was as we were talking about the fire. I remember researching and finding research about how Black farmers had been pushed off their land, and how they had experienced everything from finding dead cats in their crops to their crops being toyed with, burned and poisoned. And I remember when we first pitched the idea of the fire, I was thinking, maybe this is a little too far-fetched, maybe it's a little exaggerated, but when it came time to do the second round of research, because in the class you do 2 different rounds of research, that was one of the things that one of the things I actually came across, and I remember feeling really grounded and empowered by it, and really shocked at how sometimes you think your imagination or your idea is so far-fetched, but then when you look at, or take a real just objective look at what's going on in the world, or what somebody else's experiences, unlike yours, you find out, oh, it's only far-fetched because I live in this box, or I see through these lenses. So I think that's another aspect of creation that I'm always taking with me. okay, what am I looking at, or how is my point of view or my role coloring the way I'm generating ideas? What kind of research can I do to take me outside of that world and come up with
That's
something
great.
new?
Would you two like to read the short couple of scenes that you were going to read from the play?
Sure. All right.
Yes.
I've had a few technical difficulties, so I just have to reopen the play. I had to shut down, restart, shut down.
So while he's doing
AJ,
that, do you want to explain anything, Catherine, about what you guys are going to share?
Okay, so the two scenes that we're going to share is the prologue. And so one is the prologue. And in this instance, it's the seeds talking to each other, which was a cool way that we found of making things theatrical, you know, of adding metaphor and simile and poetic a poetic text in this theatrical performance. So that's one of the scenes that you'll see. And then the other scene that you'll see, you know, I kind of don't want to talk about the other scene because
okay, it'll let us speak for itself. That's fine.
You know,
go ahead and share them. Are you ready?
AJ, are you ready?
Hold on, I'm pulling it up now.
Okay,
Yes.
Are you seed one or am I seed one?
I think we should do it like we did in the production. And
Yeah, remind me.
Seed one, you're seed one.
Okay. All right. Do you want to read the little stage directions here? Okay.
Lights out. 2 white panels standing alone on a stage are lit from behind in the fashion of shadow puppetry. Each panel only reveals the shape of an actor's head.
So I was at the market the other day, right? And this guy tried to pick me up. And I was like, no, boo-boo, you don't got enough money for this. How about you go somewhere where you could find something a little cheaper? And then he got the nerve to be offended. Like, this ain't all natural. Hunty, I woke up like this. Like, you never know what you can catch.
You get mixed up in with the wrong ones, then you find yourself having to fight up all kinds of nasties and all the pests. And like, that's why I stay sprayed up.
Oh, I know someone from around my way who accidentally got spray on her and she died.
That's because you guys are weak. My 10 baby sisters shower in this stuff and they're glowing. I mean, like, really beautiful.
Girl, your whole family is beautiful or whatever, but we all know what y'all are producing is fake and no good for nobody.
Well, at least with us, the whole world gets fed.
End scene.
Cool. End scene. Okay. And so now we're going to go into scene 3. And after we do the scene, then we can maybe talk about it. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Scene partner, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Where have you been?
I told you I was at the bank.
I've been trying to reach you all day. Some salesman came by.
Salesman? What salesman?
What did the bank say?
You bet. Who was in this house?
A salesman from greener pastures. He wasn't from around here, but he knew a lot about us and our farm.
Like what?
He knew about our crops, the fire.
That's none of their damn business. What else did he say?
He was talking about a new seed or something.
I thought they'd had the perfect seed. What did he want from us?
Honey, you seem flustered yourself. What did the bank say?
That.
He wants the land, James. He left his card in case.
Our land. How the hell could they want our land? Our land isn't even producing anything. We're starving to death and they want to take the little bit we have.
So maybe we should give him a call. Try something new.
I don't plan on sowing those seeds into my land. We don't own that company. We don't know what that company is doing, how they're producing those seeds, and what makes them so special. We are natural farmers. Our customers value the quality of our food.
Customers? We haven't had a good harvest in years. You just said we don't even have enough food for ourselves. I can't keep doing this. It's not working.
Yvette, you were hand in hand with me when we made the decision not to buy into that company. You tore up the contract.
It's not working, James.
And now I'm the cause of our suffering.
We can't all be as strong as you are.
You think this is easy for me? You don't think I see the struggle? I see you struggle to hold back and not scream, why me? I see every time you walk out on that porch in the morning and see everyone else's crops next to our dirty ditch, how those little pieces of you die. I see that every time I come home with flowers, all you can think about is that I used to come home with a dress or some jewelry. I see how you can't even look at me at night when we're in bed, let alone be touched by me. I see you fight back tears, but Yvette, damn it, I'm fighting too. Every day, I'm out there fighting for us.
But you're not fighting alone, James. Those tears aren't about jewelry or dresses, James. They're for our daughter, who is hungry and angry because she doesn't understand why she can't have what everyone else around her has. They're for you, because I know that every day you walk through that door, I'm gonna have to play house with you. I'm gonna have to pretend that I'm okay, that you're okay, that we're okay, that any of this is okay, but it's not. You know that. I know that, and Harper knows that. We've been fighting, but our own land has been fighting against us, and it's winning, James.
Just abandon everything we worked for.
What did the bank say?
Everything we worked for.
You're not answering my question, James.
You never, ever entertained the idea of putting that shit into our land, and now
James, what did the bank say? You asked them for money?
What they always say. They said the same goddamn thing they always say. No. Happy?
No.
Great.
I'm tired. Fix this or I will.
Sorry, I interrupted. Cut off the Thank you both so much. Thank you. We will wait and see what people have to ask you about working on this and the scenes that you shared. After we we invite Winona to please share her talk with us. Winona, are you ready?
Yes.
Can
you hear me?
Yes. As they were sharing their story, I can't help but think of all the things that we were talking about in the meeting this morning, and you know how close it is to the situation.
Definitely the native situation of farming is similar. This lawsuit was called a Keeps Eagle lawsuit, and it followed the Black Farmers lawsuit over the denial of credit, you know, to farmers. And in some ways, in our situation, though, it was a little different, because in some ways, I think it was a blessing, because we didn't go for industrial ag. We stayed.
Thank God.
The way we are.
Right.
But so I actually, I wanted to start by saying there's a really great play that I think y'all should look at called Mannahatta. Have you seen that?
I've heard of it, and I am hopeful.
It is on the Lenape and Manhattan, and it goes from like 1600 to 2008. Brilliant.
I'm trying to get a copy of it. Yes. So
I mean, and I've seen it. I saw it on stage in Oregon with the original cast, some of which is from New York, and I just found it to be really compelling. So I just want to say, like, if I would want to see that show in New York one of these days. But okay, so listen, I'm gonna show some slides, and a lot of my work is just really on visual art, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about. Let me see if my screen shares successfully. Let us see. How's that? Did I do it?
Oh, yes.
Yay! Okay, so I'm just gonna, kind of give a bit of an overview with my granddaughters here of our art. So this is Anishinaabe art, and I always like to start with that because it's quite different than European art styles. And this is also the foundation of some of our art of resistance that you see today. Now I have to figure out how to turn the next slide. How do you do that? Well, okay. And these are some of the art elements of it, and you're going to see these a little bit later of our art forms. And these are usually pictographs, like in the Boundary Waters canoe area on the side of rocks. This is some old art stuff. This is some art that is Lakota or Northern Plains art. I think this is a Lakota piece, and this is art that recorded historical, it's called winter count. And historically, history in the Northern Plains, this is on a buffalo hide, recorded beginning in the center and then moving in this spiral out of different times. And you know, so this is an original art form, and you might be seeing like the beginning in here. I don't know if you can see my cursor of like the beginning of the coming of the church guys. You can see some of this in these art forms. This is like older, you know, art forms. But I just want to kind of show foundationally some of the art forms. This is art called ledger art. And this is the same, this is also recording historic events. And this is obviously, you can see from this, a battle. You know, the Indians and the cowboys, or Indians and the cavalry. And what happened is that when our people were imprisoned, you know, in the Indian Wars in places like Carlisle and Fort Marion or Fort Kearny, all across the Northern Plains, you know, both the military would give our people these ledger papers, and you can see actually that it's like an accounting paper. And so the art form of the winter count was transformed into these ledger papers, and they're really stories of resistance and stories documenting our history. And here is, as you see, this is a story about going to being deported and put into military prison camps. And so you can see the collection of people here, the bayonets, and the wagons to take those people away. Ledger art, that's what this art form, it's really prison art, you know, of the 1800s. And then here you see another piece of this recording. This is going down the Missouri River on a boat. And amazingly enough, a lot of people ended up in St. Augustine in Florida. That's where Fort Marion was. And so you have this tremendous amount of you know, people there. A lot of them didn't do well. Even Geronimo was there at Fort Marion. And this art form really came out of this prison era. And then, so given that foundational art form, I am raised by an artist. My mother is Betty LaDuke. And you know, so I've always been really attuned to, you know, different art forms. This is in 2000, no, maybe this is 1998 or so. I started commissioning artists to do ledger art to commemorate new historic events. So this is actually the installation of a wind turbine on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And for that, you can see, what you see is two of the board members of Honor the Earth, my organization, are the Indigo Girls. And so the Indigo Girls are over there on the left, as you see, but they're wearing these traditional dresses, which probably not Amy and Emily. The guys on the right are a couple of guys. They both passed on, Pat and Bob, and they were in our, you know, they did the logistics of the wind turbine. And then at the bottom is some of us women. And that's my little son, who's now 6'4", on the right. That's me and my son. So I just wanted to say that what we did is we took the historic art forms and I said, let's record historic events or events that are going to happen with them. And so we started commissioning artists. This is one of my favorite pieces, and we still actually have this one. You know, as some of you know, I've spent 7 years fighting pipelines, stupid pipeline projects, you know, that should never happen. And so we have been riding against the current of the oil and, you know, battling these pipelines. And also we've been allied in like a multiracial alliance with cowboys, basically, or ranchers. And so this is the Cowboy Indian Alliance. This piece is by Michael Horse. He's an actor, and he's best known for, I mean, he's known for a lot of things. Michael Horse is the artist, but I asked him if I could commission the slaying of the black snake. Mm-hmm. And so this is actually the death of the Keystone pipeline. And this could be the death of the Enbridge pipeline as well. Now, historically, unless a woman is doing the art, it's all men. But as you see, I insisted that he put me on a horse, and I have an Appaloosa horse, and I'm in a green dress. I was like, this is not going to be only men here. This is going to be women too. So I placed myself in this piece upon my request. But I just want to, illustrate kind of the evolution of the art form into a movement art form in this case, and the significance of it as a movement art form. This is another example. This is Pepion, John Pepion out of the Blackfeet Reservation in North Dakota, another ledger art piece, renowned artist. Again, on the right, you see, in this case, Faith Spotted Eagle, who's been opposing the pipeline for seven years or so. And then there I am in my yellow dress. He asked me what color dress I wanted. I said, I want a yellow dress. And so, this is, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if your art is recording your history, this is how we're recording it now, is in some of this art. And I've just been really blessed to have this set of artists who've said, have really stepped up for the movement and stepped up to record in these modern forums. And a lot of this is stuff that you see like in Santa Fe or as, high-end purchases. And these artists are doing the work for the movement. And I just want to, express my gratitude for Pepion and all of them. Now, what I'm showing here is some more of our art, and what I just wanted you to appreciate is I showed some of those design elements of the art in Anishinaabe culture practices and Anishinaabe traditions coming off of birchbark scrolls, or coming out of pictographs. And this artist that you're seeing his art here on both of these, his name is Isaac Murdoch. And he is an Aboriginal artist or an Indigenous artist from Northern Canada. And he has taken all of those art forms and made them, so prominent. And this is really the art of the water protector movement. And I just wanted to kind of show you the adaptation of the traditional design elements into the water protector movement. And our get out the vote work from last time. And here you see some more Isaac Murdoch's work. Green New Deal, keep it in the ground. And so, to me, it's been really, art has been an incredible part of our movement. And I was laughing because, I don't remember which class I was teaching yesterday. I kind of lost track of the cool people. But I was just saying, like, it's really important in the movement to have better art than the other team. And it doesn't take much, I have to say, when you're fighting oil pipeline companies. They have no art. Their T-shirts are lame. And we would walk into these, we would walk into regulatory hearings facing the largest pipeline company in the world, and we'd be fully dressed in our regalia with all of this art. And I could just see them kind of hanging their heads in sadness that they had no game. So art adds game to the movement, and so that's a little bit about, what this is to me. And it's been really important to me. This is some of us, here we are. This is the design elements of the water protector movement, and for a lot of Indigenous people, and, from people around the world, utilitarian art. Art is clothing, your art is in your clothing, it's not on your wall. Here you see some, ribbon skirts, and this is downtown Duluth, and you see the water protector art right there, center stage. And this is, and then you see, I always call her best dressed. That's Tanya Abed with the upside down American flag as an outfit. Excellent, excellent art. But so, a lot of our movement work is enhanced by, I haven't even talked about the street theater that, occurs in these hearings. There was a moment in a regulatory hearing of Enbridge, serious moment. And they're really trying to, are you leaving us? Uh-oh, Mom's here, Granny's here, bye. But serious in the movement, and there was a woman, an Inupiat woman, they're from northern Alaska, and she came into the hearing, and where she lives, the ice is melting. And it matters if you put in another tar sands pipeline that's gonna be the equivalent of 50 new coal-fired power plants. So she came to talk but she started talking, and then she went into it. She's a hip hop artist, and she began singing at the hearing. And if you ever get a chance to watch our film, First Daughter and the Black Snake, which is about this battle, you'll see this moment where she is singing in the hearing, and then you know, really stricken. The court is stricken, the regulatory process, the Enbridge people are all stricken by the fact that this Indigenous woman is singing in a hearing. And they said, you know, she's supposed to testify. I said, well, she testified, but her form of testimony is actually her art form. And because they were like, you can't sing in the hearing. I said, no, she's going to sing because that's what she does. You know, and so I just want to say that, you know, being who you are is definitely a revolutionary act, you know, in this arena, and stand for the art that you are. And so, you know, it's been really important to us in our movement. This is some of the art you're seeing. This is, I think, at the Smithsonian exhibit. This is in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so the red dresses, and we have done installations of this near pipeline projects. We have some installations of that are like out and about in our territory. And you will see on my reservation, when you drive down the road, you will sometimes see these red dresses, you know, because all of our families have lost someone. You know, it's not like it's someplace far away, but, you know, in the world where Indian women disappear, we have a lot, you know, we have casualties in our own families. But, you know, this art form, the red dresses, you know, is signifying these women. And we have done a lot of art, you know, a lot of installations with this art in different locations. And here's one of them, you know, at a pipe yard, you know, at the Enbridge pipe yard, where we have pipes in the background, or, you know, or the pipe yard in the background, and then us, you know, with our red dresses hanging there. And these are in really rural areas, you know, and you know, we leave the dresses there, and you know, the haters take them down as soon as they can, but we leave them there as a present, you know. This is the art of Wotan is his name. And I've shown some of his art before, but, you know, this is like serious movement art, and kind of the, you know, as my friends were talking earlier about the battle between organic and GMO farming, you know, in many ways, I think it's signified by these two characters. Of course, here you have Sitting Bull and Custer, you know, and so, you know, what we've seen is a lot of really, you know, a lot of really avant-garde, you know, taking of these, you know, different historic photos and telling these stories with it. And so this is the artist named Wotan, and this is another piece of Wotan, which is Sitting Bull. This came out of Standing Rock, and this exhibit we circulated, and this is myself and one of my board members, Kimberly Smith, who was the curator of this exhibit. And this is a picture from Vermont, where I think is Peterborough in Vermont, something like that. That one of those New England places where we had an opportunity to do a full installation of the work. And so I just want to kind of like show the movement art, you know, that we have here in our world. And then we went bigger, and we decided to just start buying billboards. And you know, when you're fighting bad guys. And so this is, you can see wearable art. I mean, that is some beadwork on those women. Yeah. And we're all wearing our red in honor of our women. And then we just decided I think we have 5 billboards in northern Minnesota that are resistance art. And they're in the middle of really conservative areas of Trump supporters. And I'm just happy that I get to smile on them all as they drive by. And this piece is called Not Afraid to Look. And at Standing Rock, this piece here, done by Charles Rencontre, overlooks the Missouri River. You know, the location is really the one on the left, looking over the Missouri River. The artist Charles Rencontre is from Santa Fe, New Mexico, but he is a Dakota man. And this art comes from what's known as an effigy pipe. Effigy pipe, you know, pipe for praying. a pipe. So it's a Catlinite pipe that's used for praying and for prayer. And one of these pipes, like a lot of those pipes, they're animate in our language. Puagan is an animate noun. And in those pipes, you find one of them it had this little man on it, and he was facing the bowl. The bowl would be where you put your tobacco. And so he was facing the bowl and looking out. And the pipe had a name. It was a named pipe, and I can't remember which museum ended up with the pipe. But it came from I think Iowa area. But the pipe was called "Not Afraid to Look at White Man." Not afraid to look at white man. And I was like, that's epic. And so Charles Rencontre took that effigy art and made it into this giant statue, which is the only thing left to commemorate the resistance to the Dapple pipeline at Standing Rock. The only physical evidence that there was this resistance struggle there is this giant, giant statue. Not afraid to look at white man. It's just called Not Afraid to Look. That's how they call it. And so, this piece is really, just a piece of resistance, And this is our village. We decided, I don't live in a housing project, but I got a housing project in my village that is full of 50-year-old housing stock. HUD housing project. And so I was inspired by Balmy Alley, I think it is, in San Francisco in the Mission District. And I said, what if instead of coming here to pick up their heroin, people come here and look at the art? Just to be honest about the situation, that next to this house is a heroin dealer, And so we're starting to, I have, someone's probably done a dissertation on if art makes people feel better. I don't know, but I decided, what if you lived in a housing project and you didn't feel like you was all ugly because you was in this good spot? So we have 8, 9, 10. We have 10 murals in this village now, and we're working on more. And I think this is my last piece, and I've shown this a couple of times. And this is, again, Wotan, the artist who had done the Sitting Bull pieces. And this is a water protector, and she is a mural in downtown Duluth. And what's so significant is that she's on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue, right in downtown Duluth. And that is an epicenter for the missing and murdered women, and just the, complete erasure and, just the invisibility of our women. And so in this moment, what I know is that she's quite visible. And, she's really, and you can see actually the inspiration came from the women that are in the billboard with me. That's exactly where the inspiration came from, is that family with their tremendous artwork. And so this is, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the recent art of resistance in our communities. And, I'm happy to answer some questions, but yeah, that's us.
Thank you so much, Winona. That was incredible. And when I think about your somewhat recent piece, I'm Tired of Being Invisible, and how many of these works, as you say, make visible the plights that you are, and the history and the facts. That final water protector in Duluth mural must be have such an impact when you see that. I also really appreciate, especially in the context of this, your art adds game. I mean, that's what a great way of thinking about it, and that it's recording history. And I also really appreciate your efforts to revision history, putting yourself into the art that, and remaking the world as you would like to see it, which I think is also what, in a way, student artists are trying to do, or artists in general are trying to do, is reveal and then remake. So I know that we have AJ and Catherine have what they're doing now to share, but perhaps first we open up to some questions, and then try to leave a little bit of time, or maybe AJ and Catherine, it will come up as questions happen, that you can share the exciting projects that you are working on now as artists. Rosamond?
Nicole, would you unmute and ask your question? I think it goes to all three of the speakers.
Yes. Okay, my question was, why is it okay for artists or people in general to think, as in like using their brain, but as soon as they write, act, or speak, or draw how they feel, they get a significant amount of criticism, hatred, or anything negative is brought upon them? That's my question.
Question. Anybody have a?
I don't have that experience, you know, and maybe that's because of where we're coming from and in our community, but that's, you know, I have an experience of artists really revered in our community. And then, you know, we know that non-Indian people don't get it, but it's time that we're not invisible. And so we're just going to keep making better art. That's what we're going to do, and make it bigger, just bigger, just keep getting bigger.
Keep getting bigger.
Yeah, I think, thank you for your question, Nicole. I think that art is subjective, right? And so when you bring in a piece of art, it doesn't mean that everyone has to like it or has to agree with the point of view that you're sharing within your art. I think that being an artist is an act of bravery and resistance. And as Winona has mentioned before, it's bringing visibility to what's invisible. And so sometimes you might find a hater or two that's like, oh, I hate that, you know, why'd you write that? Or that looks terrible. But you keep growing, you keep fighting, you keep, you know, training, continue to become a better artist through and through. Training is super important. And then when you believe in what you have to say, then that's all that matters, because amongst maybe 10 haters, you'll find 50 people who are like, I'm so thankful that you took the time to create this, you know? So if you make the art bigger than you and bigger than, you know, if you make it a mission, an act of love, an act of resistance, and an offering, then, you know, it'll be received as such.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes when you're, depending on the kind of art you make, or really maybe not depending on it, sometimes when you're revealing a truth or talking about something that's not often talked about, it just simply makes people uncomfortable, or it rubs people the wrong way, you know? Sometimes when you're creating stories, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the play Doubt, which had a movie made about it. But I remember reading about how after the production, people would be in fights outside the street because it ends with a little bit of uncertainty of whether it's centered around a priest who may or may not have raped a child. And it ends with a little bit of uncertainty about whether it happened or didn't happen. And I think that from what I remember reading, depending on where people landed on the sides, depending on where people landed on whether they thought he did or didn't, it kind of was telling to how they viewed the world, or why they excused it, or why they didn't think he did it, or why they did think he did it. And that sparked a lot of unrest and problems. But even I think about plays like August Wilson's Fences, where people were crying in the middle of the audiences and men walked out. There's a famous story in my family where my grandfather walked out of Fences. I think the truth sometimes just makes people uncomfortable. And when people have that discomfort and are in places of power, or when people have that discomfort and are afraid of what the effects of the art you're making are, they get rowdy and loud and push back. And I think it's just important, as Catherine is saying, to not let people's reception of your art be your main barometer of success, you know?
Thank you. We have a few kind of connected questions, so I'm going to ask them all together, and then the speakers can kind of address what makes sense for them. Asada points out that in our society, in this country, it relies on the invisibility of Indigenous communities. And so she asked the question, would you say that a critical element of movement art, she puts in quotes, is its visibility? And along with that, Emily asks, if I live in a community in which I don't have, or if I live in a place where I don't feel like I have community, where can I find art resources to empower the children that I'm raising? And Rachel asks just to talk a little bit more about missing and murdered Indigenous women, which again is a question about invisibility. Winona, you're muted again, sorry.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is about, you know, I like doing big stuff in places where they don't see Indians or think about us. I love that. I love that. I like being in people's faces, you know, because, you know, someone like me or my 6'2" sister walks in some place and all those jaws drop and I'm like, oh yeah, we're here. Oh yeah. You know, so it's an organizing tactic to make sure that like people get that we're not going anywhere. And in fact, we're, you know, and so it is breaking these barriers of invisibility, you know, and because there's so much associated with trying to, you know, basically erasure of Native people, because Native people, Indigenous people are really about the legitimacy of the United States. I mean, you know, on what title was that founded, right? You know, and so it's been a really consistent effort to make us disappear. And so you see this, you know, really innovative art that is emerging, coming out of all these communities, and it is growing. And we like to get bigger. You know, there's a lot of resources out there. I'm really not equipped to give a lot of guidance like that in terms of you know, where you find your art community. But I would just say get big, get bold, you know, because that's how we feel better, you know, and that's how we heal, and we have a right to we have a right to do that.
If I can just jump in to answer, what resources can I use to empower my child when we don't have a community or mental support where we live? I think the affirmation of family, of parents, of whoever is around the child that you're raising is super important. You know, just the idea of saying, hey, great job, you know, great job. What are you thinking in terms of the art that you're creating? Or, you know, what's your favorite movie? Or do you really enjoy that song? I want to hear you sing it. You know, I think I've been an artist ever since I was 6 years old, right? Because I had parents that were like, wow, she can really sing, right? And so they just throw me into places and I would sing. And, you know, I didn't officially start training until I was around 9 or 10, right? But all those years I had family members, my brother is also an artist. So, you know, people to affirm my choice, to affirm my desires, to affirm my passions. And I hear stories, and I have personal friends who, you know, have started dancing a couple of years ago, and now they're filming movies and dancing background for some of the world's biggest artists, right? So even if the child doesn't have the necessary resources right now, if they have that dream, if they have that that passion and that fire, and you keep affirming them and you keep letting them know that it's okay and that there are opportunities, the older they get, they'll be surrounded by more people, and they'll be yeah, I pray that they'll have more access to just jump into different things and to different opportunities. So I think the biggest thing when you're raising a baby artist is to just let them know that they're awesome and that the whole world is available to them. And there are a lot of free programs in New York City. So please, 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 whatever art form they're interested in, Laura, if you, or Professor King, if you want to connect me with this person, I'd love to maybe email them of places that I've, you know, that have cultivated me as an artist, because I come from a low income, you know, background. So a lot of the stuff I was doing was free for a long time. So
thank you,
be happy to
That's
connect.
really great. Thank you for offering that.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And to, I guess, kind of piggyback with what, sorry, off of what Catherine was saying, I think also in additionally is be willing to rethink or reimagine what quote unquote art is. Be willing to make things at home that might seem silly at this stage, or to an adult might seem ridiculous, but really inspire a child's creativity. I remember my parents would let us, or wouldn't let us, but we would do things in our house like cover the entire house with paper towels and have a snow party and go sledding and almost die sliding through the floor on all the paper towels. I think being willing to be inventive in terms of creating things with your children also helps a lot, I think. My parents couldn't necessarily do that because they were working, but I always had a space in a room, not literally a room, but space to try things and experiment when I was bored or when I wasn't entertained. I didn't have a video game or anything, not that I have anything against that, but I had to kind of make do with my own imagination. And I think there's something to be said about, almost as Catherine was saying in the devising class, when you have limited resources, what comes up, And when a kid has limited resources, something always comes up. And also I would say also be open to, I guess, even if you can't take them to different kind of different kind of forms of art, be willing to talk about different kinds of artists and the work that's kind of going on around the world. Because I think a lot of times we grow up with this idea as an artist is, a pop star or a filmmaker. And there's so many different kinds of art and so many ways to intersect with art. Even if you have those talents of singing or making films, there's different kinds of ways to put that art to use and to work. That doesn't necessarily have to be, pop star filmmaker.
And so I think might be our last questions. We had a question about the past, asking Winona LaDuke to give some more context. You showed us so many examples of the ledger art, but we had a question about why is it significant that it was actually on these ledger papers? If you could tell us a little bit more about that history. And then for Catherine and AJ, a question about what are you working on now, specifically during the pandemic, how are you creating art?
Perfect.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, what I was trying to illustrate is that the art form came from the winter count, which is on those hides. That was the art form. And then when the buffalo were destroyed, there was no buffalo upon which to do this art form. And the Indian people were imprisoned, and they asked for a way to write or to do something. And so what was given to them was the accounting paper from the Indian prison. And that's why it's called ledger art, because it's done on, it's produced on ledger paper. That's why it's called that, from accounting ledgers. And so, like, if you look it up, you can kind of see the history of it, but it's a really important resistance and, prison art form that, has been transformational to a lot of us. When a story could be told, someone could tell that story, like of what it was like to go there and what happened, and that's how it was told, was in this art form.
Thank you. AJ or Catherine?
Okay.
Sorry, my computer was on. What's happening right now? I had to change locations.
Do we have enough time to kind of go through what we were going to share?
Briefly,
Okay.
we have 7 minutes total.
Okay.
So you have 3 minutes each.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I can do hold on. Should I go first, Catherine, or do you want to go first?
Sure, if you have it.
Yeah, I can go first really quickly. I can go first. It looks like I can share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. So one of the things that I'm currently working on right now is this piece called Taxilandia. It's by an artist named Modesto Flaco Jimenez, and it's born out of his experience of working as a taxi cab driver in Bushwick and all the changes that he saw up close and personal through gentrification of his town. Essentially kind of big background of the full piece is he went away to college, went away to college for a year, and when he came back, he found that Bushwick was an entirely different place, to the point where his friends could no longer afford to live in the space in the neighborhood that he was living in and that his family was in. And he felt he felt that, and I don't want to speak for how he felt, but he felt like he had to create something about what he was seeing, feeling, and experiencing, because while he was witnessing all these changes, he had also acknowledged that the reason he was away was possibly because of the opportunities he had been afforded through gentrification. And so what the piece aims to do is take people through Bushwick and tell the story of what happened in this neighborhood and the people that used to be there, and honor the Black and brown bodies that in many ways helped build and sustain the neighborhood and make it profitable up to the point where somebody could come along and start buying land and essentially pushing people out. And right now, what we're in the process of doing is adapting it for a site-specific piece, right? Because when I first saw it, it was kind of in a theater. People were sitting down on a couch, they were watching it through a screen, and we were interested in really how do we take that and give it to, and allow people to really be immersed in the city of Bushwick, and the only answer was to actually build an actual cab tour. So the piece is a cab tour that Flacco is driving people through as if when he was a cab driver. And one of the things that I really love about this is this idea of sometimes when we see plays that talk about issues or topics that are important but don't really relate to us, we can kind of wash our hands and walk away, or kind of think that, okay, well, I've done my part. That's my duty. That I'm good. But part
30
of
seconds, AJ.
30 seconds. Okay. Part of the beauty of this is that when they get out of the car, they still have to walk through Bushwick with these new points of views that he's gone through. Something interesting about about it is that he doesn't just acknowledge the gentrification that he experienced. He also acknowledges that gentrification in many ways has been the way of the land, not only in Bushwick, but in New York all the way from its beginning. And if you briefly look at this slide, he kind of talks about the Lenape Indians that were the original people who owned the land, and how it went from them to the Germans and so on and so forth. And he really acknowledges that in many ways that's how the city has progressed, but he also wants us to think about new ways to progress without constantly cutting and pushing people out and leaving people under-resourced. Here are some pictures of the
Quick.
Here's a picture of the stage version with people sitting in a taxi car chair looking at a screen. Here's the cab that he's going to be using to
Nice.
take people through.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. Sorry, you have 3 minutes.
Wow, love that cat. Okay, so
or 2.5 maybe.
Great, thank you. So I'm a part of a collective called the Dominican Artist Collective. And through the New York Theater Workshop, we're developing what's called the Cooking Project. There was some press that was just released. That's super exciting. So you'll be able to watch. Yes, I will send it to you. So the Cooking Project is 3 episodes that are highlighting the Dominican American experience. So I'm a first generation Dominican woman. I came to the United States when I was around 3 years old. And so the piece kind of highlights through 3 different episodes, facets about the Dominicanidad, basically. And so a piece that I've been developing is called Pambiche. And I'll just play a really quick snippet for you. Let me see. Share computer sound. All these things. Okay, weird. Or maybe not. Maybe I won't. Okay.
Worked earlier.
Okay, no, I won't. Yeah, it worked earlier, but
That's okay. Just explain. We have 1 minute.
Yeah. So Pambiche is a musical style that was very popular. Oh, I'm sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen now?
You're sharing yourself.
Okay, I'm sharing myself. Okay, stop sharing. Okay, so Pambiche is a musical style that was very popular during Trujillo's era. He was a dictator in the Dominican Republic. And so the piece highlights a woman who escaped Dominican Republic to then come to the United States as a Black Dominican woman during the Jim Crow era, and how, you know, she left one form of traumatic regime to then come into another experience as an immigrant, and how she kind of used Spanish as a way to protect herself and to move through the earth. And then the latter half of the piece is her grandson kind of speaking about Black Lives Matter. And so we were able to draw the thread from the Dominican Republic to now in 2020. And it's a fascinating piece. And I want to invite all of you to watch it. Right now, we're in the process of actually shooting these episodes. And so I'm super excited to get all of that information to you. I'll send it to Laura,
Yes,
so you can watch it. It'll be through the New York Theater. Yeah, through the New York Theater workshop. And I'm super thankful for today. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Winona, would you like to share any last words of inspiration for our fellow artists on this call?
You know, I just want to thank everybody for having me today and for opportunity to talk a little bit about art. Most of the time I got to talk about pipelines and stuff, so it's nice to talk about art.
Yeah, and I really love your statement. Art is a revolutionary act, and we have to stand for the artists that we are. And all of us have artists within us, whether we're fighting pipelines or we're actually, committing full time to making art. But thank you for being an advocate of artists and of all the things that are so important. And thank you all. Thank you, Catherine and AJ, for being here and sharing your work and your process. And thank you all participants for joining us today. Professor King, do you have anything else you would like to add? Great time having you all here. Really an incredible discussion. Much food for thought for the rest of this week. Thank you so much, everyone.
Miigwech, thank you.
Miigwech.
Thank you all.
Thank you.